So you found the skeleton. How would you tell it's a dinosaur? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on this.
Hey everybody, welcome to Dapper Reacts number 71. Big number there for God with David Menton, who is just about to tell us just how likely it is that from a random pool of amino acids you could pull out a hemoglobin, which, like, yeah, I bet. I'm here, of course, as usual, with Vishanti. Vishanti, how you doing?
Apparently I'm writing an ocelot, and that's very cute.
It is, yes, and you are. Yeah, that is the default picture that I have of you for when you are not going to be on camera for one of our streams. Is you on the Ocelot. Yeah, I mean,
they're so darn cute.
They are. They really are. And they can regrow lost limbs, which is
yes, they can.
Pretty impressive. 4 5 pounds. Ben, predictable. Let me make sure I get this right. Mutation, thick tunicate, B2022. Thank you very much. Says, to make up for not being here last week, AIG are a virulent release of venereal vibrators.
Woof.
Okay, we'll take a drink for it. I am drinking some iced coffee with a bit of milk and Kahlua, which is
yummy.
It is pretty good. Yeah, it's. I need the caffeine because
yeah,
I'm not entirely awake yet. So
yeah, I feel that.
We're not going to go over all the drinking rules. You guys either know them or you'll catch up. But hey, look at that Ben Predictable Mutation Thick Tunicate just gifted 10 Dapper Dinosaur memberships. Thank you so much. So, Vishanti, how you been while I take 10 drinks?
I don't know. It's kind of a mixed bag. I always have such a difficulty answering that question because we contain multitudes, as it were. But at least in the last 24 hours, doing fairly well. Had some really great one-on-one conversations with some new friends, which is very delightful. Booked a new genealogy, like, I will say quasi-client, because they're more of like a personal friend, so it's not entirely a business transaction. There's that, and then I started reading into the book that Joshua G's got me from my wish list. Thank you very much. It's Jewish Life in Medieval Spain, which I quite like. And it's written on a level that is just above where trade books would be, but just below academic papers. So that's like right in that sweet spot to keep me engaged. Nice. And I was out by the pool for about an hour yesterday reading through that, so that hopefully soon I will activate melanocytes and not look like a ghost. Because I am inside way too much. And while that is very good for my skin, it also is not my preferable, like, appearance. So I would like to at least put on a little bit of a tan.
Yeah.
And not be see-through. So.
We got a few things. Fearmonger in the wheelchair says, weren't you just drinking on Erica's stream? My God, that was a re-upload of part of her stream. That stream was done, like, last week. Like, it's...
Erica's on her way to Africa right now, right?
I don't know if she's actually physically on her way there, but I know that a big portion of that stream was to fund that. So,
It's like I saw a post by her on Twitter today, and it mentioned something about, like, oh, I'm already, I'm going to be traveling, and I'm going to try to do better updates this time, so I'm, like, super excited to see.
She might. I mean, it's possible she might be. I have not checked our group chat in a little while. And even if I had, it might be that I missed it. So she could very well be off to Africa. As I explained, I think to her, I turned off Twitter notifications because they were really bringing me down, like, a lot, because it's Twitter. So what that meant is I'm worse at keeping up with our group chat because it's on Twitter. It's on Twitter until Blue Sky releases group chats, and then we're migrating everything over.
Yeah, so it's just DMs right now, which is pretty nice.
Roasting a Paradolia Enthusiast Color for $4.99 says, I misread the title as Benton being the guest. I was never so happy to be wrong. And then DM Google Debunker Wing for $2 says, F's in the chat for Snack with a Godzilla. We'll take a drink for that Godzilla. And rest in peace, Snack.
Yeah, send one up for the Snick. Oh, okay, so an hour ago, Erica said today I fly out to Nairobi for museum and fieldwork. This time I will try to do daily updates via YouTube Shorts, but we'll see how well I stick to it. Thanks to all those who have supported me. Here's to amazing season. So.
Okay, well, there you go.
Hooray!
All right. So here's the deal with David Menton. Like I said, he was telling us just how unlikely it is for complex proteins to form out of a pool of amino acids, to which I would say, yep. And because no one has ever suggested that. So
what's your point, Vanessa?
Right? So we're going to hit play, and we're going to see what else he has to say about that. And also, while this...
Oh, that's right. Doc Dino is also on site.
Yes, he
doing
is.
Like field work. So everyone's in the field. Woo!
Mm-hmm. Yep. In fact,
science.
I got some phone calls from him on the way there because he was also doing a little bit of investigation into the whole bison/triceratops horn from
that's
Mark
right.
Armitage. Yep.
I think you mentioned it.
Yeah, because it turns out that the Glendive, which is the nearest city to the dig site that Mark had, was it wasn't technically on his way, but it was like a 20-minute detour. It was like, yeah, I'm going to Glendive. I was like, oh. All right, but here's... Also, before we start, just so that I don't forget this later, would you like to tell the chat about the movie that we watched this week? You're gonna have to be way more specific because we watch a lot of movies.
Okay, we watched the Darren Aronofsky Noah.
Oh yeah, we did. That is a thing that we did do.
Oh man.
Oh, that was... I'll tell you this. I see why AIG hated it. I didn't...
Yes.
I wouldn't quite say I liked it, but it was not nearly as terrible as I was worried it was going to be. Because I'll be honest, when I saw the trailers, I was entirely turned off. I was like, this looks just absolutely terrible. And it wasn't absolutely terrible.
I mean...
It was just not great.
It was, it wasn't horrible. Like, obviously the special effects were good. The actors were doing their job, you know. I understand why fundamentalists would hate it, because it's riffing on a lot of apocalyptic literature and, like, essentially biblical fanfic that people used to write.
Yeah.
And I will say this, though. It was cool as heck seeing their take on, like, Nephilim and fallen angels. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, I gotta say, the effects on the Watchers, all around were pretty good. Old man, writer of To Serve Uncooked Matthew. Nice. Says, AIG is a bag of what Twitter has become. Sad days. Yeah, we'll take a drink for that.
Also, I'm not sure what's going on with the display. There's like a Discord window behind the Ashalot in me.
Oh, is there? There shouldn't be.
I think Discord's being a poopy.
We'll call that Dapper's a professional. Alright, so we took a drink for that. And then Roasting a Paradoli...
We're getting to peek behind the curtain of reality.
I know.
The Matrix Code is visible.
Roasting a Paradoli enthusiast Keller for $1.99 says, yay, science, but with a red flag. Also, to Old Man Writer of To Serve Uncooked Matthew, thank you for your 5th super chat. I do appreciate that. It's fun that YouTube gives me, like, you know, milestone super chat numbers. I like that. Alright, but here's some Menton, because we've been going for about 10 minutes and we haven't gotten to Menton yet.
Just got that out of the way so that I wouldn't interrupt our train of thought later, which I'll probably do, but with a different topic.
No, I get it. But yeah, anytime you say, hey, remember that movie we watched? Like, that's...
But I specified it was this week, and we didn't watch more than one single movie this week. We did watch some Boston Legal, but that...
Your idea of my internal clock is generous, let's say.
Okay.
Now, what do we need to make life? We're talking about one protein. By the way, why would an atheist even do this?
What?
So the number that he was using was calculated by, I think, like Isaac Asimov or something. It's like, I don't know, probably to show that, you know, unlikely things can happen. Just at a guess. You know, the usual reason that someone might do that.
He did this article because he was showing that we now have a way to sequence proteins back then when he wrote the article. And if we didn't have a way to sequence them, we'd never come up with the right combination by putting them together until they finally worked.
I mean, yeah, technically true. If we didn't have a way to sequence proteins, we probably wouldn't randomly guess at the right sequence for any given protein. Cheers, Menton. I don't know what that has to do with anything, but, like, yes.
All right.
By the way, how many out of all those possibilities for putting hemoglobin together, how many are known to work?
Few thousand, actually. I'm going to guess he's
Yeah.
going to say 1, but it's actually a few thousand. But let's see what
I
happens.
like it when they're like, what's the probability of da-da-da-da-da, or what's the chance of such and such happening, and it's like 100%.
Yeah,
Because we see it. We exist. It's like, what's the chances of a universe being this made, da-da-da-da-da, and it's like 100%.
yep. For
House is hard.
$5 reduce with their third super chat, Nicholas Kale Music says David thinks that ropes spontaneously form from piles of fibers. I don't think he would say that. In fact, I would say that he would probably be adamantly opposed to that. But he seems to think that that's what, like, quote-unquote atheists think. Of course, when he says atheist, what he just means is people who don't deny science, which includes a lot of Christians, some of whom I know watch this channel, and others of whom I know are guests on this channel. So, you know, definitely not just the atheists, but, you know.
TM.
Right.
Normally. 5.
No, it's not 5. It's there are literally thousands of variants of human hemoglobin that vary in very small ways. And most of which are not pathological. Yep. Turns out different amino acids can be very chemically similar and can result in functionally identical proteins despite a difference in sequence. The most important thing for proteins is the gross shape and functional groups. And differences in amino acid sequence don't have to really change those in significant ways, even though there are differences in sequence. I've looked this up many, many times. There are thousands of different variations for the human hemoglobin. Yep. Which means that there are several thousands of different alleles, because any one hemoglobin protein sequence can be coded by multiple alleles, which is also fun.
Yeah, and it's like, someone in the chat was like, there's Christians in here? It's like, yeah, there are Christians who know that evolution's a thing. You don't have to, like, not believe in evolution for, be Christian. Like, people make that work.
I mean, Christians are more than welcome here. This channel does not.
This is a
Christians.
pluralistic space, as it were.
Mm-hmm. Yep, this is a religiously neutral space. You can be here if you're. In fact, you don't even have to actually not be a creationist to be in the chat, as long as you're going to be polite about it and not, like harassing.
Because we're here to talk about science.
Yeah. Roasting a pareidolia enthusiast Keller for $1.99 says chemistry follows the laws of quantum mechanics. This is true. And Asta 6 times the 10 to the 23rd proves Odin Ryu, who's been a member for 15 months, says David Menchuron, nature had hundreds of millions of years to figure out those sequences. Yeah, and also the fact is that there's not a targeted sequence. We actually know. So what does hemoglobin do, right? Hemoglobin takes oxygen and it transports it around your body. Cool. But we know of numerous other proteins that can also do that, and we don't know how many proteins there are that at least theoretically could do that. And we also know that within each of those groups of different molecules, like cyanorythrin and others, like there's so many of them. I mean, I think just animals have like 5 or 6 different classes of protein that do oxygen transport. Anyway, we don't know if that's a closed set. We don't know if life has stumbled on all of them. And within each one of them, there are multiple different variations. Sorry.
Speaking of science, I was watching some videos related to various topics in science, and one of them was discussing, subatomic particles and all that good stuff. And it kind of occurred to me that if we would substitute out the word tiny for the word quantum, maybe weirdos would use it less, because quantum mechanics and quantum physics is just talking about really super tiny physics.
Mm-hmm. And maybe we get fewer.
And that doesn't sound as woo. Like, oh, this is a quantum vibration. This is a tiny vibration. That's my recommendation. Just substitute it with the word tiny, because that's all it is.
Yeah. Well,
Or
I mean, it's
itty
a little
bitty.
bit more than that, because the quantum part refers to the fact that there are discrete
Units. I know it's
involved, but
a quanta of I know.
Quantum.
Quantum.
Yeah. Quanta.
I always get those plurals
plural.
confused for
It's Latin.
quantum and quanta.
Yep. It's like continuum and
It really-
continua.
Right. Or datum and data.
Or vacuum and vacua.
Those things.
Yeah.
Latin.
Centered. Who's
Tiny mysticism. Says
Oh,
Derpy
no. Centered, who's been a member for 8 months, says, seems ages since I made a live while it's live. Well, welcome. I'm glad you made it this time. Bits of carcinogistic rage, who's been a member for 11 months, says, tuning in from the Scottish Highland Games. Well, thank you. AIG is a bagpipe of Tashers with a Godzilla and a Mothra and a King Ghidorah and both the bad and the good type of pelagic tunicates. We'll take a drink. Thank you very much.
Man, I haven't talked to one of my Scottish friends from Perth in a very long time, but they had sent me some trinkets when they were over here last time, and one of them was just this really clever poetry about Scots, and the slogan was like us, not many in there died, and I quite enjoyed that. I need to go find that card somewhere. They also sent me a pen with a little Nessie topper. Very cute.
Nice. Naramdaputs, who's been a member for 9 months, says, in my opinion, data should be an uncountable noun. Well, here's the real secret. It often just is, because the thing is, people who insist on using data as a grammatical plural with datum as the singular are overall in the minority in English, and it realistically is really more of an aspect of a sociolective English than it is just a standard part of English. Normally in English, when you use the word data, most people use it as a non-count noun. That's just what comes naturally to most people. That's why you say people talk about like pieces of data with using things like piece.
Hashtag linguist.
Not a linguist. I just know what count and non-count nouns are.
You are not beating the charges.
I'm not saying that I'm beating the charges. I'm just saying that they're false. There's a difference.
Oh my god, that is one of my life goals, Fearmonger. To drink Iron Brew.
And then so
one day.
One of the things with linguistics, a field of science with which I'm familiar, but I'm not an active researcher in, is that linguistics has a very heavy focus on descriptiveness rather than prescriptiveness, because ultimately what matters in a language is what the people who speak the language do. And so I would argue that, by and large, data is a non-count noun. And if you use it as such outside of like an academic paper or something, probably a perfectly fine thing. Asta 6 times 10 to the 23rd proves Odin Ryu for $4.99 says, replace quantum with the suffix let, such as brainlet describes Menton, and phalluslet describes AIG contents. We'll take a drink for that.
It's almost a Pokemon.
Ooh, yeah, but
Rixie Purple says that Dapper's a lay linguist.
That makes me feel
too much. Now, see, that one I can get behind.
Maybe. Although it makes me feel like
you are a lay linguist,
like the guy who like isn't part of like the Catholic clergy, but who like leads the Bible study or whatever on like the military base.
We have a similar thing where it's not like you're not officially clergy, but you help lead services. That's a gabbai. So maybe there's a linguistic gabbai.
There you go. Rosina Paranoia Enthusiast Keller for $4.99 says, whatever our individual creed may be, we are all united by our shared hatred of science and nihilism. Yeah, that is the big thing that unites this channel.
I'll drink to that with my coffee.
You know what? Sure, I will too. With my
cognitive trifurcation says linguist.
All right, here we go.
One Dapper adult hemoglobin dinosaur. And 4 fetal hemoglobins.
Oh, he just means per person. Yeah, okay.
What?
That's even worse. So he is right that there are fetal hemoglobins which aren't expressed when you're, even just a few months old, right? But that is a thing, that there are more oxygen transport molecules floating around in your body in embryo. But that still, even those have variants. Because target specificity in the proteome is not so specific that it has to be completely identical. So when we say human hemoglobin, there's not just one chemical. And even if we say adult hemoglobin, there's still not just one.
My Atkinson says, I'll call him a PhD linguist just to watch his face turn red and little cartoon smoke come out of his ear.
No, definitely don't have a PhD in linguistics.
And the steam sound like a kettle whistling.
Now we need to get that on a soundboard.
Yes, please.
Well, not today. Fetal hemoglobin has a higher affinity for oxygen, allows the baby to sequester oxygen at a better rate than mom can. In fact, there have been situations where The mother has been asphyxiated or has gone into a lake or river in a car and has
dark.
died from.
It is dark, but it is also interesting in that there are ways in which an embryo can protect itself from oxygen starvation, despite the mother having that problem. It is scientifically interesting, but yeah, it is also dark.
The problem being that they're dead.
Well, it could be other things, right? It could also just be like, there's some kind of other oxygen stressor, like you have to dive or something like that underwater.
Ah, yes.
Or you're just holding your breath to be quiet or something because there's a predator. Because remember, I'm sure that a little embryo is going to have a bigger problem running out of oxygen, like in a shorter period of time, than the mother will. Because there's also that, right? Like, my guess is that if you're out of oxygen in your blood as a little tiny embryo, you do not have long.
Yeah.
So.
From asphyxiation, but was pregnant, and if they got to her quick enough, they could deliver a living baby because the baby with its fetal hemoglobin was still pulling oxygen out. Well, what's the simplest form of life we know? We've just seen what's the likelihood of coming up with one
What does that
protein?
even mean?
I mean, the only thing I can think of for the simplest form of life would be like the life with the smallest functional genome, which I believe is going to be some kind of Archaean, but I'm also not positive. And then Anne sends face hugs to brighten your day Gladstone, who's been a member for 32 months and is at the annual level, says, "Hey Dapper, I'm back from vacay and happy to see a live stream. Happy belated birthday. Linguist is the perfect title. Linguist is the perfect title for you. Thank you very much." And by the way, the face hugger plushie is, in fact, within arm's reach of me, as it almost always is.
Excellent.
Yes. In fact,
That was, I know the height of the pandemic was like the worst experience, but I did enjoy people making face masks out of face huggers.
Yeah. Also, I really like Maddie from Science Side Up's Star Trek face mask.
Yeah.
Where it looks like a
You know what?
like a TNG era uniform shirt.
I did have a face mask that was the Winter Soldier's mask,
Nice.
and the person who made it for me, I was like, "Hey, I misplaced it. Can you make me another one? Here's the amount of money that I sent you last time." So I sent them enough money for another one, and they just never got me one, and I'm still pissed about it.
Oh, that's lame.
Yep.
Should've
It
at
is
least
very
sent me
lame.
the
It makes
money
me
back.
very angry. Yeah, I tried to you can send a PayPal invoice thing for a refund, and they just deleted it and blocked me, and I'm like, "Oh, okay."
That's lame. That's lame.
Yeah, I'm really salty about that.
Like, look, sometimes you have to cancel a commission, right? Like, it happens. That's
Yeah,
the
just
thing.
tell me.
But send the money back.
Yeah,
If
I
someone's
got.
just randomly sending you money for a repeat, commission, and you don't want to do the repeat commission, send the money back. Just do that.
Yeah,
It's
I was
really easy.
I was starting to get suspicious because every time I would check in every couple weeks to see about their progress, they'd be like, "Oh, I had this life thing come up," or "Oh, this other thing came up," and it was over and over, and I was like, "Dude,
Mhm.
something feels weird," and it just
Sorry about that.
because that was the perfect mask for me to go to conventions in.
Yeah.
Dang it. Ugh.
Let's see what else David has for us.
Well, they say the simplest form of life is mycoplasma genitalium, and it has 482 protein coding genes.
I mean, that is pretty small. I'm not going to say that that's definitely the simplest form of known life, but 580,000 base pairs, 482 protein coding genes. I doubt you're going to find a much smaller genome. So I'll say, even if I'm not sure that it's absolutely the simplest genome of any living thing, gotta be close.
That would be as simple as it gets, as far as we know.
Okay.
No
Among modern
Sure.
life, though, that's the other thing. Among modern organisms.
way, huh?
Let's see where he's going with it.
Absolutely no way.
You can't just say no way. You have to say no way about what? What do you think the no way is? Do you think there's no way that particular form of, I think, Archaean could come about through the random assembly of parts? Because I would agree with you. If you're saying there's no way that thing could have formed out of any, abiogenesis process, I'd also agree with you, because no one's saying that that's what happens. Remember, any currently living organism is the result of 3.5 billion years of evolution. The first life wasn't. It was the product of literally no years of evolution.
Oh man, this is one of my pet peeves that he's going to talk about statistics and probability. I already kind of ranted about it a little, but
Yep.
I'm going to note it.
Oh, he's definitely going to do that.
Statisticians say this: the statistical explanation must operate in the last instance with very high probabilities. But if our high probabilities are merely low probabilities which have become high because of the immensity of available time, then we must not forget in this way it's possible to explain anything. Just
Let
invoke
me guess,
endless
that's
time.
taken out of context.
I don't know. I haven't actually read Karl Popper.
And is Karl Popper a biologist? Because the only thing that comes to mind when I think of Karl Popper is the paradox of intolerance.
So Karl Popper was in fact a philosopher of science.
Hey,
He was the one who first pushed falsificationism as a way to distinguish between science and pseudoscience. That's what he's most famous for, as far as I'm concerned. Savage Poultice Cook. Yeah, hold on. Savage Poultice Cuisine Cobra for $2. This AIG is a bag of the habitat of Microplasma genitalium.
Yikes.
Oh, I'll take a drink for that. Yeah, did you see the stream where the Poultice cuisine came from?
No, I'm behind watching your live stream.
So, Raw Matt mixed up a story in which David, like King David from the Bible, requests a poultice for some sores, and the story of Daniel and his companions refusing to eat meat in Babylon, and then becoming like the wise men of the court, which is connected to their not bothering to eat, the unclean meat sacrificed to idols. And he used that. He was talked about how David requested a poultice and water, and then he got smarter after he ate those, because apparently Raw Matt doesn't know that.
What?
Raw Matt, not only did he mix up those two different Bible stories, he doesn't even know what a poultice is.
My God, did he think it was poultry?
Well, no, because he's trying to advocate for vegetarianism.
Oh.
So there's no reasonable excuse. Raw Matt just doesn't know what a poultice is, and he thinks it's something you eat. Even though it's very much not something you eat. Cross-platform Adventures, who's been a member for 15 months and is at the amulet level, says, it has such a small genome because it's a parasite that takes what it needs from its host. Yeah, that is one of the things about parasites, right? Parasites can have extremely reduced biologies. There are some parasites out there that are cnidarians, right? Which is the phylum to which like jellyfish and coral belong, that don't even have mitochondria. Think about that. An animal that doesn't even have mitochondria. Because they just directly get all their ATP and ADP from like absorbing it from their fish hosts. As to 6 times 10 to the 23rd proves Odin Ryu for $4.99 says, creationists, stop bringing up probability as a gotcha challenge. No, they can't. That's difficulty level impossible. And then DM Google Debunker Wing for $2 says AIG is a bag of microplasm and genitalium with kimono dragons.
Google debunkers! Google debunkers! Google debunkers.
You know what? This is driving me Google Debunker.
That is driving me Google debunkers.
Also, the kimono.
I wish that Milo would put that on actual like t-shirts, not just hoodies, because like it's hot AF in Southern California, and I don't want to just
he's out there like living in Massachusetts where it gets super cold.
I know, but not everyone lives there, and there's like a massive heat dome over the continental U.S. right now.
Did you hear the kimono dragon bit?
What?
Yeah. One of our, I think it was Matt. Was it Matt? Guys, let me know. One of the creationists I was covering said was talking about Komodo dragons, but kept saying kimono dragons.
Oh no!
Yeah, and like, look, I'm not going to get on you too hard about that because, like, I'm sure that's a slip of the tongue, but it was pretty funny. Because
I would commission fan art of me riding a kimono dragon.
Yes. I was saying that I wouldn't mind having a kimono with prints of Komodo dragons on it. That'd be pretty cool.
Heck yeah. Kimonos for everybody!
Here we go.
As they say, it undermines the statistical foundation of modern science. Well, back to our explanatory.
I mean, it doesn't, though. That's the thing, right? It is true that if all you're doing is just saying, well, if we have enough time, then unlikely things can happen, that is a weaker explanatory mechanism than just having a high likelihood event. But sometimes unlikely things happen, and the longer you wait, the more things that are unlikely will happen. That's just a fact.
Yeah.
So, like, I can understand why you might find that less satisfying as, like, an explanatory mechanism, but it doesn't invalidate it. Even if Karl Popper pointed out that it was a less satisfying explanatory mechanism, it doesn't help at all.
So,
but also, you know what
my
Karl
problem
Popper
with
would say
people
about
using
gender creationism?
that it's BS.
Oh, yeah. He would absolutely identify it immediately as pseudoscience.
I was going to say, like, one of my main problems with the whole statistics thing, I'll just use sports as an example. Like, when two teams are playing each other and they go, oh, Team A has won this many times out of this many games. Acting as if that's a determining factor for who's going to win this time. It's not. It's just telling you what happened in the past. Like, that's the ratio of wins to losses, right? And you can average out the likelihood that Team A is going to win based on their season, but it's not going to tell you definitely who's going to win. And that's why I really get irritated with creationists and, like, people defending dumb ideas with statistics. It's like, it doesn't tell you what will happen. It's just saying, hey, out of all the possible things that could happen, these are the most likely. Mm-hmm. Chance is one of those wackadoo things where something could be extremely likely and just never happen.
Yeah. Also, I gotta say, we have like 93 people watching, but we only have 36 people having hit like, which unfortunately means that I have to say, I like less than half of you, half as well as you deserve. So hit like so you don't get Bilbo'd again. Exactly. All right, here we go.
Arbitrary filter. If chance doesn't explain it.
Again, it's not just chance. Selection is a big part of this, but let's just ignore that.
Then possibly design explains it. And if design explains it, it will be specified.
What does that even mean?
That doesn't.
So here's the thing, right? When he talks about specified, right, he's just ripping on William Dembski. William Dembski has himself largely withdrawn from the entire ID movement, in part because his idea of specified complexity doesn't really mean anything, and everyone kind of started to notice it. Right? Like, other mathematicians looked at his math, because that's what he is. He's a mathematician. And basically, every single mathematician who looked at it was like, what is going on here? This is just a whole pile of nonsense. You haven't said anything in this entire book. And yeah, he did recently come semi out of retirement in order to write a weird checklist to see if you've been influenced by Darwinism, in which, like, it evinced that either he has absolutely no idea what evolutionary biology is, or he's just writing a piece to trick people and lie to them about what evolutionary biology is and what its conclusions are. Like, those are the only options. He's either trying to trick people into thinking that evolutionary biology isn't what it is, or he himself has absolutely no understanding of it. I mean, beyond the most basic.
He's ignorant or lying. Love it. Yeah. Love those options for him.
Well, I mean, that sums up pretty much all of intelligent design and creationism. They're either
and also for those of you
dishonest.
who didn't see Dr. Dan Stern Cardinal's post this week, that the Discovery Institute is actually on, like, the advisory board for that Project 20.
Yes, they are.
Just be aware of that when you're going to the polls.
Mm-hmm. Also, oddly enough, they keep writing more and more articles about Dan Stern Cardinal, which is...
I love it. I love that they're just so pissed off at him and Dave and, like, everyone else that's been destroying them. Great.
I've been in 2 of their articles, and I don't even know why. I barely cover anything from them, because I feel like other people are doing a better job than I would. And then they're like, and then there's Dapper Dinosaur. I'm like, oh, hey, guys.
And you're like, all right, what's up?
Hi.
You and your deplorable ilk.
Oh, no. All right. Here.
Yeah, I actually took a screenshot of Dan's tweet and sent that to Professor Dave just in case.
Nice.
He's probably swamped with emails because of, like, how busy he is, but I know that once he finds that out, if he didn't already know it, he's gonna be on that, like, what?
Strawberry, 5th Super Chat Vein, who's been a member for 13 months. I do love the name, 5th Super Chat Vein.
It's so true.
Oh, thanks, YouTube, for not notifying me of the stream. That's totally what I actually meant when I clicked the notify me button. Yeah. Yeah, YouTube sucks with their notifications.
YouTube has it out for Strawberry Vein in particular, it looks like.
Yeah, I don't know why they hate you in particular. Like, they've broken your super chats. They're not notifying you. I don't know. All right. Anyway, here we go.
First of all, what do evolutionists say about design? I mean, I don't know. I look at the hand, it kind of looks designed to me, doesn't it to you?
No, it doesn't. You know how many points of failure there are that make your hand completely useless? Like, there are so many things that can go wrong with your hand, and it makes it virtually impossible to, like, use it. There's all sorts of different ways to have nerve damage, to have tendon, ligament damage. You can have muscle damage in your lower arm, and then suddenly your fingers don't work. Like,
Carpal tunnel exists.
yeah, carpal tunnel, like, you just type too much and then suddenly your hand hurts. Like, no. Your hand looks very much like a foot that was adapted through, like, just happenstance and selection to grasp onto trees.
Grab stuff.
And then later to just do food manipulation. And then, yeah, now it can be used as for tools. Like, it would be hard for me to imagine a worse way to design a hand. In fact, you might notice that when people make hands, like robot arms, for manipulating objects, the only time they tend to mimic human hands is when they're supposed to be prosthetics for humans. Mm-hmm. When you're making a hand for, like, an assembly machine on, like, a factory floor or something like that, you don't do that. Even if it's supposed to be a universal manipulator, right? Like, the space shuttle had a manipulation arm built into its cargo bay so that it could manipulate cargo. It didn't work like a human hand. Not at all. Savage Poultice Cuisine Cobra, who's been a member for 19 months, says, I look at human eyes and they look like they're not on the fracking forehead to me. Yeah, like, there's so much about the human body that's like, yeah, if I were designing this, I would have done it better.
Elbows. I rest my case.
Elbows were the worst. I mean, hey, what if we just have an unshielded string of nerves just running right through the soft spot in your elbow where you can bump it? Gee, thanks. That's great.
Yeah.
All right, here we go.
But I know ophthalmologists who say they see no evidence of intelligent design in the eye, and otolaryngologists who don't see
Weird.
evidence.
It's almost like people who study this crap for a living might understand it better than you, David.
Yeah, imagine using as a flex, hey, the professionals that I know that study these things don't think they're designed, but I think they are. Like, okay. Asta 6 times 10 to the 23rd proves Odin Ryu for $4.99 says, my new favorite defense against the humans are designed. The default is yes hiccups. Yeah. Did you know that there's a part of your brain that is in charge of saying no hiccups? And if it gets damaged, then your brain just defaults to yes hiccups for the rest of your life?
That's like failing open.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's...
I hate this!
Yeah, your brain is always saying, hey, hiccups. But then there's a little tiny part of your brain that's like, nope, don't do that. Mm-mm.
My God.
Yep. And you can have a brain injury that turns that part of your brain that says no hiccups off. And now you're just stuck with hiccups for the rest of your life.
I remember it was like one of those Ripley's Believe It or Not things when I was a kid, reading about the person who literally had hiccups their entire life and they were just so miserable. They were like, look, I want to die. Please kill me. This is awful. Nothing worked.
Yeah. So... yeah, I don't know. I feel like if I were designing the human brain, the default would be no hiccups. And then you would have circuitry that says yes hiccups occasionally. Because maybe hiccups are important for something. I don't know. They don't seem to be.
Feels like a troll at this point.
I mean, ultimately, I've never had hiccups and been thankful to have the hiccups.
Nope.
Like, I don't think it actually is useful. But, like, Tiktaalik is a Chronomo Dragon says, why hiccups? So here's the thing, right? Hiccups seem to use the same basic neural pathways as well as the same musculature. In a lot of ways, at least, that things like you can actually see an Ashloch, right? Like what Vishanti's writing. So, like when juvenile salamanders take in air and pass it, or take in water in order to pass it along their digestive and respiratory tracts, they use a lot of the same motions and the same muscles that you do when you're hiccuping. So it looks like it's probably a reflex action from very, very long ago, back when tetrapods were still basically just fish, in order to increase oxygen intake in a low oxygen environment. And because it's so deeply rooted in instinctive behavior, it just was easier in evolution for there to be a little thing that says, no, don't do it. And then there you go. Now it's off. And now that you don't have to worry about from day-to-day life, the occasional bout of hiccups aren't exactly life-threatening. They're not going to hurt your fitness in most cases. So it's good enough for evolution. And as a result, your brain is default yes hiccups. And it takes effort from part of your brain to say no hiccups. Yeah, it's Meldeborn,
It's amazing that things have survived as long as they have, because like life at this point feels like an increasingly complex set of ad hoc bit and baling wire solutions
it
to
absolutely
keep
is.
stuff functioning.
The only way to really do a good design analogy is like, imagine that you were like a tech company that had like servers, right? But when you first set up your server, it was just one server rack for like, your few dozen customers, and you weren't worried about cable management or anything. So you just ran the cables, right?
Yeah,
because you've only got like 5 or 6 cables. How much management can you really need with 5 or 6 cables? And you know what? Fair enough. But then you kept expanding, and now you have a server room with like 5,000 server racks, and you never actually started doing cable management. And so now, anytime anything goes wrong, it's just like, I guess we just have to start tracing cables. Because not only did you not do any cable management to keep them tidy, but you didn't even label your cables. They just go
Didn't even
places.
label them.
Yep. They just go places. That's kind of how life works. There's just wires and stuff just going places. Who knows why?
TikTok is a Chronomo Dragon. Says Rube Goldberg machine. Yes, that's what evolution is. It's just freaking ad hoc Rube Goldberg machine. That's a lie.
Meldeborn, who's been a member for 21 months, says, believing that something looks like something else means that the two are related is peak conspiracy theory. Yes. As Milo from Minuteman put it, looks like. Yeah, anyone who starts their argument with looks like is probably not someone you should be paying attention to. Yeah. Oh, sorry, Alex Markle, I've apparently triggered your flight response. Your flight response with that analogy.
Yeah, I was sitting here thinking, oh my god, I'm gonna break down crying in a second if I start thinking about these cables too long.
Yeah, no, look, as someone who's done cable management, there's a reason I picked that one, and it's because it's horrifying.
Nightmare.
Yeah, I was never doing servers, but like, I don't know if you know this, but electrical distribution systems have a lot of electronics which require a lot of cable maintenance, and I did a lot of that, and yeah, believe me, you could tell when you went into a electrical distribution cabinet and someone had not paid attention to the cable management. It was just like, oh no.
The modern, like, I was going to say the modern version of like the 9 circles of hell or whatever. One of them is cable man on infinite server racks. Yeah.
Roasting a Paradoli enthusiast color for $1.99 says human hands are good for holding with a clap. It's true. They are. They are good for that. All right, here we go.
Of intelligent design in the ear. Well, Richard Dawkins freely concedes.
Oh, the intelligent design of the ear. You know what my favorite aspect of intelligent design in the ear is that sometimes undamaged cilia in your cochlea will just kind of get depressed down, and there's nothing in there that can knock them back up, which means that you constantly hear the tone that they're supposed to be transmitting to your brain, which is what tinnitus is. That's my favorite bit of intelligent design in the ear. And then sometimes
this is one of those things that I took active steps to prevent when I was in high school. I started wearing earplugs when we were drumming and when I was going to concerts, and by God, it has helped me preserve 90% of my hearing capability.
Nice. Very nice.
That there is evidence for design. I'm sure you're all familiar with Dr. Dawkins, are you? He's a very outspoken atheist.
I am familiar with Dr. Dawkins, yes.
Dawkins, huh? I don't know, doesn't ring a bell.
I'm not a big fan, as it turns out. But,
yeah.
It's been said of Dr. Dawkins that this man knows more things that aren't true than perhaps anyone alive.
It's been said. Okay, by whom?
Yeah, I've never heard anyone say that. I definitely think that Dawkins has high confidence about some things that aren't true. But okay, I would like to take a drink as a joke that didn't land, but it did land, and I hate that. Because it was not even a joke. It was just a dumb thing to say.
From her stupid atheist.
Oh yeah, as Maya Atkinson says, outspoken atheist equals people who bring facts to the party. Yeah, that does seem to be like David Menton's interior idea of what an atheist is. It's just someone
atheists who speak.
Yeah.
They just talk about stuff that's even, outspoken atheists.
Even non-atheists who just say things he doesn't like about science. Because that's the thing to remember, is you don't need to be actually an atheist for a creationist to call you an atheist. I mean, look at Kent Hovind's Whack an Atheist series. He's now whacked Clint from Clint's Reptiles like 3 different times. Clint's not an atheist. Clint is very openly a theist. He's a Mormon. Now, Kent probably wouldn't consider Mormons Christians. Okay, I don't care. He can have that little internal fight if he wants to. But what you can't say about Mormons generally is that they're atheists.
Atheist? Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like, yeah. And Clint is not even the first theist that Kent has had on Whack and Atheist, because it doesn't matter to them. Right?
Yeah.
There's us and there's the atheists. It's an us and them thing. And it doesn't matter. You might be a theist. You might be a member of a non-theistic religion who doesn't consider yourself an atheist. You might be an agnostic. Doesn't matter. If you agree with science broadly, they will lump you in with atheists. They might, when pushed, say, well, I guess technically he's not an atheist, but it doesn't really matter, which is what Kent said, because he was pushed when he started doing Whack and Atheist episodes on theists, and people would point out, like, hey, this person isn't an atheist. And be like, yeah, but it doesn't matter because they're still pushing the evolution lie. Okay.
I'm intentionally lying, and I don't care.
Yeah, basically. Landon Knoll said, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where on your time zone and latitude, from your astronomer guide to our favorite universe. Hello, Dapper Dinosaur and Vishanti. Hi, Landon.
What's up, Landon? Happy belated solstice.
Yes. Landon is one of my heroes because he has told Elon Musk to his face in front of NASA that he thinks that NASA should pull their contract from Elon Musk because of his obvious inability to, to deliver. And when I say to his face, I do mean on a video call, because at least since 2020, that is to your face as far as I'm concerned. Video call counts as in person.
I love this, Landon. You have now ascended the rankings of my, internal.
Oh.
Incredible.
Look,
Legend.
Landon is one of
out
the
of 10.
only people I know who watches my channel who has a Wikipedia page.
Mm-hmm.
All right, here we go.
So here he is. He wrote a book called The Blind Watchmaker, which was subtitled, Why the Evidence of Evolution Reveals a Universe Without Design.
Technically true. He did do that. Take a drink.
You got the whole idea of the book is that this is going to show you no design, evidence for design in the universe. Then, once again, I think God came down, got a hold of him by the ears and said, Richard, on the first page of your book, you're going to write this sentence. Do not deviate.
Okay, so
no.
I want to point out that according to David Menton, at least part of The Blind Watchmaker is divinely inspired.
It's divinely inspired, exactly.
Right. So that is what David Menton is proposing here. So, hey, next time you go pick up Richard Dawkins, remember, this might be divinely inspired scripture. You never know.
Because on page 1, that would be the first page.
Actually, it's probably not. Most books start with Roman numeral pages that come before the page numbered 1, but whatever.
He said the following, and here it is printed verbatim, just the way God told him to write it. Biology is the study of complicated things that give the appearance of having been designed for a purpose. Man alive, if I were an atheist.
Yeah, I don't know why he thinks that that's a significant quote, but maybe he's going to tell us.
Writing a book arguing that there is no evidence for design in nature. I would have tried to avoid saying this on the first page.
Why? It's the entire premise of the book.
There are animals whose camouflage gives the appearance of the predators that they're trying to repel. Does that make them the predators they're trying to repel?
Yeah, it's
no.
I really don't understand what Menton thought he was doing here, because, the entire point of The Blind Watchmaker, right, is to point out that, hey, sometimes things that look like they were designed weren't. And here's how they could have come about, even though we don't have good reason to think they were designed. Which, how else do you start that book except by acknowledging that some things superficially seem designed? What other possible intro could you have to a book making that point?
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to say, nothing intuitively seems designed in the world other than the things that humans have themselves designed, well then why write the damn book? Right? If that's your conclusion, it's not a book you need to write. Science Kimono Dragon Nerd for $10 says, you didn't read my milestone chat last time, so you have to say this. I, Dapper Dinosaur, declare pelagic tunicates to be delightsome creatures with a Mothra and a Godzilla and a Ghidorah, and that is in fact something that Science Kimono Dragon paid me to say, and it is in fact not true of me, but I'll take a drink for it.
We all heard it.
Strawberry, 5th Super Chat vein with, of course, what is absolutely not their 5th Super Chat, but who thinks it is. Says, Neil Shubin used the analogy of a building from the 1800s where the electrical system was updated, repaired, and added to until it was a convoluted mess that barely functioned, and said, no one would ever design it this way. Yeah, that's actually a pretty decent analogy. Because that is really a lot more like how life operates. And actually, that's kind of similar to the analogy I was using with the servers and the cable management, right? In fact, actually, the house that I grew up in was actually kind of like that, because it was built before the area had electricity. And the electrical distribution system was clearly something that had been piled together. At one point, some of my uncles had added to the electrical wiring to add in, like, wiring to a new part of the house. None of the breakers made any sense. Like, there was one breaker
Oh my god.
that controlled part of the living room and part of the dining room, but not all of either room. If you wanted to completely electrically isolate either the dining room or the living room, it would also isolate parts of the kitchen because none of the breakers made any sense, because it was all just being added to as you went. And yeah, that's the kind of thing. Or if you've ever played Factorio, remember your starter base where everything just turns to spaghetti? That's another decent analogy, is your spaghetti starter base in Factorio. Which, by the way, is getting in some DLC in not too long, which I'm kind of excited for. It looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. Because, you'll get more than one planet. I think there's going to be like 4 or 5 planets. All right,
No idea what we're talking about, but yay.
Factorio was great, Vishanti. We should play sometime.
Right.
Okay.
I might have kept it to page 200 or something, or in a footnote, but not on the first page.
Then you just don't know how books work, man. That's all I can say.
Well, I agree with him. Biological systems certainly do give
I mean,
the
if the
appearance
whole Bible's about Jesus, why didn't you just put him on page 1?
Yeah, odd, isn't it? Of course, he'll just say, well, I mean, he is on page 1. That's what they meant by God.
He's the direct object marker.
The part they forgot to translate. Oh,
They're hiding the truth.
oh. Man, that gave you flashbacks right there. If you don't know what that one was, go look at my streams with Kip and Vishanti. Because
Yes.
we were told that the secrets of the Hebrew Bible were being hidden by the evil translators that didn't translate the word et, which just marks the next noun as the
It's a direct object marker.
You can't translate it into English. It doesn't mean anything. Oh.
of having been designed for a purpose. Now, how can he say this? The reason he can say this is there's 2 things about which he's dead certain. 2 absolute truths he does not question. Absolute truth number 1 is there are no absolute
That your
truths.
suit's not tailored to fit your sleep, man.
Yeah. Also, I don't know that Dawkins would agree that there are no absolute truths. I mean, he's kind of gone bioessentialist lately, so I feel like he would actually disagree with you. Because he seems to think that your gender is one of the immutable facts of the universe. Which is a weird stance, but...
Absolute truth number 2 is matter, energy, time, and space is the whole of reality. There's nothing outside of the material world.
Now, I'm not actually sure if Dawkins would say that he's sure that that's true. I do think he would say that it is true. I don't know his level of confidence. I also don't really know how you would assess that claim for truth values, right? Like, if it's not true, how would you know? And I'm not sure. And I guess you could have things like, supernatural encounters or something. And maybe. Part of it is that the supernatural is poorly defined, which is one of the problems with materialism versus supernaturalism. It's not actually clear what anyone's talking about when they say, oh, I'm a naturalist or a supernaturalist, right? Because you'll ask some naturalists, like, what if I found, like, really compelling evidence of ghosts? And they say, well, that would just make ghosts part of the natural world. And so, at that point, I'm not sure what the difference is between a naturalist and a supernaturalist, because a naturalist basically just seems to think that the word nature or natural is just synonymous with things that exist. So, yeah, now we're getting into those weird philosophical areas that I usually try to avoid, because I don't think that there are terribly good answers that I've ever heard as to what these terms mean. Right? Like, there are some versions of naturalism...
Trillion Water says it's a Sagan quote. The only absolute truth is that there aren't.
Okay. Yeah. But with the whole naturalism thing, like, I feel like there are naturalists who could, like, find a way to fit theism into their version of naturalism. And at that point, I'm like, I don't really know what this word means. It's one of the reasons why I don't call myself really any of these things, like naturalist or a supernaturalist. I don't know what they mean ultimately. And whenever I get definitions, they ultimately seem to fail at like the actual level of like, okay, well, what if we made this observation? And so for that reason, I'm unsatisfied with all of the philosophy around that. Savage, Poultice Cuisine Cobra for $5 says, I hate how much young Earth creationists make me defend Richard Dawkins, whose character is analogous to that of AIG. Yeah, we'll take a drink for that, because, my goodness. Yeah, I really do get tired of when people make me defend people I really don't like. It happens...
Yeah.
One reason I don't like to talk about politics very much. Because a lot of times people like to lie about politicians they don't like, and then I feel like I have to be like, well, okay, but that's not what happened, right? And it's like, yeah but I don't want to defend this guy. I just get mad,
like, how dare you make me defend this person?
Right? I actually remember that happening a few times for Trump, where people would say things that just, like, weren't true, and, like, that's not a thing that's happening, right?
And if you defend, like, oh, that's not what he said, they're like, so you support Trump? It's like, oh my god, I'm just gonna go run into a wall.
Yeah, I remember once, someone got super mad at me when I pointed out that a border wall would, in fact, reduce the number of people coming across the border, even though there are other ways across the border. I was like, I knew you would be supporting this border wall. I'm like, I don't support the border wall. I think it's extremely stupid and a huge waste of money. But the fact still remains that walls make it harder to go across the area where the wall is. Like, that's just a fact.
Like, hey, did you know that if you cut someone's leg off, it's going to make it really hard for them to walk?
Oh, you must be pro.
And if someone goes, oh, they can't walk at all, and you'd be like, no, it just makes it harder. So you're pro cutting off legs? Like, no!
Yeah. Yeah. Creationists, stop making me defend Dawkins. I really don't like doing it. There are enough things to dislike Dawkins about. You could focus on those things.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're going to explain the origin of people or cells or whatever, you have to do so in a purely materialistic way. So the fact that biological systems look designed doesn't fool him. He knows there's no designer.
Actually, I'm not sure he would even say that, because Richard Dawkins has said that there is at least the barest of possibilities of design. He just hasn't found any evidence of it. So, yeah, I don't think it's accurate to say that Dawkins would say with, that he has absolute confidence in the idea that nothing in biology is designed.
So then how does he explain it? He says biological systems counterfeit design. So you see...
Oh, yeah, James Duncan says, as a Vietnam-era vet, I really don't like having to defend Hanoi Jane, but there have been some definite lies about her. Yeah, I mean, people make up lies about people they don't like. And I don't like that. And so if people tell lies about someone that both of us don't like, but I happen to know it's a lie, I usually call it out. So,
just argue against what they actually said. Not a fake thing.
There's enough bad... look, taking messages from U.S. prisoners of war, promising to deliver them to their families, and then just not doing so is already pretty bad. Right? Yep. You don't have to come up with extra things on top of that. That's already a really shitty thing to do.
Yeah, that's all really shitty.
You just criticize her for that.
There again, that's where evolution is going. What kind of counterfeiting mechanisms are there that give the appearance of design that have absolutely nothing to do with intelligence or planning?
Literally camouflage that mimics predators.
Right.
What are you talking about?
But it ultimately comes down to mutation, drift, and selection. Those are the mechanisms.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is, David, everyone knows that those are the proposed mechanisms. Your audience knows, we know. Your job is to try to show why those don't work, but simply feigning ignorance of their existence doesn't help, right? You're going about this even rhetorically badly. Because you're just making... And I know I'm talking to this guy like he's going to listen to me. The guy's been dead for like a couple years. Look.
Pull out the Ouija board.
This is the creationist broadly, right? I'm just trying to help you rhetorically. If you want to get people on your side, you can't just sound dumb on purpose. I know you are dumb on purpose, but don't sound dumb on purpose. But hey, it is about time that we take a break. So what I'm going to say is that hopefully we're going to go on information, and you guys will actually get the musical stylings of Beethoven, because I think I've fixed the reason that it wasn't playing music for like the last two streams.
Like a rendition of 4 minutes, 33 seconds?
Yeah, basically. So hopefully this time I actually have it fixed. Even though I fixed it last time and it just broke again. So, I mean, who knows what's going to happen. We will be back in just a few minutes. Take some time to grab a drink, grab a snack, use the bathroom. We'll be right back. Hey everybody, we are back from the break. Thank you for sticking with us. Let's see, we have Savage Poultice Cuisine Cobra who gifted 5 Dapper Dinosaur memberships. Thank you so much. I'm going to take 5 drinks. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Alright, so now that we are back, I'll give my quick back from the break talk, which is to say, hey, this channel is almost entirely supported directly through the support that my viewers give me, whether it be through Patreon for super chats, super stickers, super thanks, gifted memberships, buying themselves channel memberships, buying merch from the merch store, all that stuff. It's really important, and I really appreciate your generosity. If you are currently someone who is not supporting the channel financially, and you can both afford to do so and are interested to do so, then there's a number of great ways. Now, remember, if you can't afford it, please don't support me financially. If you are having trouble with paying your bills, getting groceries, anything like that, don't give me your money. Take care of yourself first, and then your family, and then me. Obviously, before anyone else outside your family. Obviously. Friends? No. No, I'm kidding. But if you are interested in helping me out financially, one of the best ways is the Patreon. Patreon is where I get to keep the most of the money. It is very convenient for me. I like to think it's reasonably convenient for my patrons. There's also the channel memberships. I get to keep a little less of that, but you also get the added perks of a little green name and a cool symbol after your name, as well as the ability to send the membership milestone chats, and also use the emojis in your chats and comments on YouTube. So those are cool. Either way, you get access to a Discord server that's just for my supporters. You also can get your name in the credits if you're at the $5 up tier. The Patreon starts at $1 a month. It can go all the way up to $100 if you want. You can get a 15% discount if you give annually. The memberships start at $1.99. They go all the way to $20 a month. They're only monthly. There's no annual option. If a like a monthly or a annual pledge isn't your thing, there's still other options. Like I said, there's always super chats and super stickers and super thanks. There's also a merch store linked in the description. I also have a Amazon wish list. You can just grab me a cool thing if you want to. I really do appreciate getting stuff from that. And also, there's one thing that I haven't mentioned too many times, but it is important and is a increasing concern, which is that if you want, you can render for me. Now, the way this works is I use a distributed render farm called Sheepit to render my videos. And as you've noticed, I've had a very long streak of having all animated videos. Unfortunately, my current point count over on Sheepit, which is how I quote-unquote pay for my frames to be rendered, has taken a bit of a hit recently as a result of, lots of animation. And so I would love for it to go back up. And so if you want, there is a description in the description. There's a how to render for me option. And if you're interested in this, basically you download the Sheepit client, you put in my username and the password that's in the description, which is just a key so you can render on my behalf. It doesn't give you access to my account on the website or anything. And it's also a randomly generated key from Sheepit. It's not like a password I'm using for anything else. And then, yeah, your computer will just render things on my behalf, presuming that it's powerful enough to render any of the frames that are up there. And basically, if they're not my frames, they'll give me points. If they are my frames, well, then you'll have rendered a frame directly for me, which is an immediate help for whatever video I'm working on. And the reason I have to do that is that most of my videos, if I were to render them locally, would take 5 or 6 months to render, of just non-stop rendering on my computer. Obviously, I can't do that and also get out weekly rendered videos, right? Like, that's impossible. So that's why I use a render farm. So if that is something you are interested in, please check that out. I can't say it's technically free because it will cost you some electricity because, your computer will be doing things. But ultimately, it won't be more electricity than, like, say, running a video game for that same length of time. So probably a few cents on your electric bill. So yeah, other than that, Vishanti, you got anything before we hit play on David Menton again?
Oh.
All right, here we go. Here's more David Menton.
Well, I agree with him. Biological systems give the appearance of being designed for a purpose. One organ I studied, as I mentioned earlier today, is the placenta. What an amazing organ that is.
Hey, here's a fun thing. The placenta has developed several times in different organisms, and there are some lizards that are currently in the process of evolving a placenta. But it's not from the same structures that mammals make their placentas from, because evolution is contingent. Pretty neat, huh?
Dun-dun-dun.
Here is a placenta. You can see on the left the side that the fetus would see. The other side is the side that's plugged into the mother. And
that is a really weird way to phrase that.
Yeah,
Plugged into the. It's like, okay. I mean, I know what you mean. It's just super bizarre. I don't like it. I don't like that.
When the placenta is unplugged from the uterine wall at the time of birth, it severs several arteries that supply the blood to the placenta.
Yeah, for some reason he's just using the word to connect and disconnect for this. I don't know why. I mean, yeah, it's weird. I don't like it, but other than that it's a weird word choice, I don't really have anything else to say except it's just like, yeah, gross.
Placenta. In fact, the blood flow into the placenta is so fast at the time that the baby is born that approximately all of the blood of the mother goes through the placenta in 10 minutes. This means that when the placenta unplugs, you are severing several arteries, a little smaller in diameter than soda straws, that are bleeding so fast that in 10 minutes you will totally exsanguinate the mother.
Good thing they close up, I guess.
Yeah.
Anyone see a problem here?
No, because I know how placenta evolution works, and placentas didn't start out that way. Here's the thing, right? We like to talk about marsupial versus placental mammals, but did you know that marsupials have a placenta? It's true. They do. They just don't have it around for very long. And you know what happens when that placenta is severed from the uterine wall? It's
They
not,
instantly bleed
Yeah,
out.
well, it's not full of arteries that are the size of straws. It's full of much smaller blood vessels, right? And sure, they still have to close off pretty quickly, right? Because it's still going to be blood leaking in. But it's much less of a problem. And so as you go for retaining the fetus for longer and longer internally, that requires a bigger and bigger placenta with a better and better blood supply because it's going to be supplying a bigger and bigger embryo. And so as the pressure is there to increase placenta size, it comes with the pressure to increase the rate at which you can cut off blood supply when the placenta actually severs during delivery. So this is only a problem if you imagine that the evolution of placentas goes from like, here's an organism laying an egg, to bam, human-style placental development with internal pregnancy and the whole works, but no way to shut off the blood supply. But that's a straw man of evolution. That's not how it works. I'm taking a drink because it's working me up and I need to cool my brain off and it's really dumb. Also because Kahlua is delicious. It really is. Although it's a little too sweet.
Hot day. Woo.
Oh, yeah. Which it is. It's a hot day. Well, actually pretty cool compared to yesterday. So maybe I shouldn't complain too much. It's only 96 Fahrenheit instead of 106 Fahrenheit.
Could any wound be worse than this? It's been said this is the worst wound anyone gets and lives. What would a surgeon do?
I mean, I've known of cases where people had like their heads impaled and they lived. I feel like that might be worse, but I don't know. I'm not here to like do like a weird measuring contest between wounds.
In a situation like this? Well, she'd probably grab a bunch of hemostats and just start clamping blood vessels as fast as you can go. Well, that's what God does too, except he has the hemostats already in place. Little muscular sphincters in every one of the arteries and veins supplying the placenta. As soon as the placenta unplugs, the dotted line means it always...
I still really hate the way he's talking about this.
This is making me feel gross.
Ugh. And the thing is, it seems like he's trying to use a euphemism, but it would be so much less terrible if he just used normal words. Right? Like just like say separate or sever or something like that. But instead when you're saying like plugging, it just makes it so much worse. Because in an attempt to use a euphemism, you're just drawing direct attention to exactly what the thing is in such a weird way. Because it's not a normal euphemism. I really hate it. Ugh.
Yeah.
Ugh. But again, it's like, there's nothing I can say, well, like, it's inaccurate. So, no, it's just a stupid word choice. But I don't like it.
Tears on the side away from the sphincter, so the sphincter stays with the mother. The muscles clamp down. Instead of being insanguinated in 10 minutes, maybe lose a cup of blood in a normal pregnancy.
I know that he didn't say this, but it sounded like insanguinated and not exsanguinated.
Yeah, he earlier definitely said exsanguinated, so he might have just mumbled a little bit. Savage Poultice Cuisine Cobra for $2 says, I do not like hearing this man say sphincter. I mean, that's fair. I don't mind too much because all a sphincter is really is a ring of muscles that can contract and then close off whatever opening that they're around. And there's sphincters all over the place, right? There's sphincters in your stomach. There's obviously the anal sphincter. There's sphincters in all sorts of blood vessels. Hey, if you think the male reproductive system doesn't have sphincters around blood vessels, yeah, you're wrong about that. It absolutely does. So like, yeah, sphincters are all over the place. And your iris are sphincters. I mean, he's talking about a technical biological term, using the technical biological term. And I feel like it might be worse if he's trying to use something else, just like how he's trying to say plug and unplug for the placenta, which is just so much worse for me. I would prefer that he keep using the technical term, although I understand why it makes some people uncomfortable. I get it. JMCA Does Lifts, who's been a member for 7 months, says, hey everyone, I haven't been able to catch one of these streams in a while. Either way, AIG Sao Saco de Paus, which I'm sure I butchered because I don't speak Portuguese, but I can read it enough to know what you said. So here we go. We'll take a drink for that. Thank you very much. And Strawberry 5th Super Chat vein with, again, their 5th Super Chat. says Placenta Unplugged, my latest acoustic album. Oh no.
Oh my god.
Oh, Menton, what have you done? What have you wrought upon this earth?
How's dumb luck working for you so far?
Well, again, it's not dumb luck. It's selection acting on chance processes, and really well, because as you might notice, we actually have a gradient of all of these steps, right? You can see how oviparity goes all the way to viviparity, right? So we have oviparous mammals even, right? So the echidna, the platypus, they lay eggs. Now, one of the things that's interesting about the eggs is they hatch very shortly after being laid. They spend virtually no time outside of the mother as eggs. They hatch within days. And that's because the mother retains them for a while. And we can see other organisms which lay their eggs almost as soon as the eggshell is formed. That's what typically happens with oviparity. But some animals...
Go ahead. I'll try to...
Okay. Some animals retain the eggs inside the female reproductive tract for a long time so that they're less vulnerable as eggs. Okay, well, some lizards and snakes will go so far as to retain the eggs internally until they hatch. And then what looks like live birth will happen. This is called ovoviviparity. Because oviparous means egg birth. Viviparous means live birth. Ovoviviparity is egg live birth. There's live birth, but there's still an egg. Now you can get to things like some very, very basally viviparous lizards will retain the young inside, but they still kind of have an egg, right? The yolk is still expressed. They don't have a strong connection to like the uterine wall or anything. Okay, well now we're getting closer to viviparity. Now if you establish any weak link between the uterine wall and the embryo, you can reduce the size of the yolk. Now you might say, well, why is that an advantage? But here's the thing. It requires a lower amount of initial investment metabolically in the embryo, which means if you're under stress and you need to terminate the pregnancy, which animals can self-terminate pregnancies, it's a thing. It happens even to humans when you're very stressed. If you are pregnant and you're very, very stressed, your chances of a miscarriage go up. That's an evolutionary response, because it's easier to have another baby than to just, die and then your line ends. Evolutionarily speaking, losing a baby is not as big a deal as dying during your reproductive years. So anyway, there's a selection pressure to allow for, as the embryo is developing, maternal supply of nutrients and oxygen and whatnot. And then that, as we can see in marsupials and even in many lizards, can lead to a specialized bit of tissue that helps isolate the blood from the embryo and the mother while still transferring nutrients. That is the beginning of the placenta. But at this point, sure, the placenta has a blood supply, but it's not going to be fatal if it doesn't have specialized sphincters or anything else, blood clotting mechanisms, because it's just not that big. And then you get into like the marsupial condition, where the embryos are born very, very, very underdeveloped compared to, say, how humans have their babies, which are already underdeveloped compared to most mammals, right? A more typical mammal would be like a puppy or a kitten, where like it's walking around with its eyes open in like a day or two. Whereas humans don't learn to walk for quite a while. But anyway, and that whole, not only is that a very easy to account for range of stages in evolution, but we can see all of them currently existing in modern animals. There is no mystery to this. It is not some kind of barrier for evolution. It is a well-understood thing. Got a few things to read. Renee for $5 says, somehow the mix of euphemism and technical makes both worse. Yeah, no, I tend to agree. If you're just going to be euphemistic, then I would say just stick with euphemisms. But if you're going to also then put in like lots of technical terms, then why aren't you using technical terms the whole way through? But I guess that's just a stylistic choice. Marvo Marvinson for $19.99. Thank you very much. That's very generous. It says, recently found you, Professor Dave and Aaron Roth through Guts of Gibbons videos. Just wanted to say it's channels like yours and theirs that give me hope that my kids won't grow up in a more egregious theistic dystopia than present. Well, thank you very much. I'm very happy you found me.
Yeah.
And while I don't make these videos for kids, I do try to keep them reasonably family friendly so that kids can watch them without their parents being like, hey, what kind of crazy nonsense you're watching now? Which is why I try to keep my streams up around PG-13. Sometimes fail, especially if I have Chesh on.
Yes.
Yeah, Chesh has
what I was going to say,
filter.
yeah, very unfiltered, yeah. What I was going to say is, like, Menton goes, well, how's that blind chance working out for you? It's like, there's 8 billion humans on Earth. I think we're doing just fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, I'd call that a rousing success, friend.
Yeah. There's not too many mammals that can get to an 8 billion population in one species.
Also, the doves outside your place of recording are very intensely loud today.
Well, fortunately, I have my noise gate set up so they don't always trigger it.
So anyway, the placenta has unplugged, and if you look at it, the side that was plugged into the uterus is lumpy. And those lumps, of which here is one lump, they're called cotyledons.
My lumps, my lumps. My little placental lumps.
Yes.
Approximately 20 cotyledons look like little trees. You look in a diagram, for example, between the two blue lines there, this would be one of the cotyledons, approximately 20, look like a little lump up here. This is the trunk of the tree. You have one trunk, you have lots of branches. The branches go out to twigs. Some of the twigs attach to the uterine wall are called anchoring villi. Most of them are free. Baby's blood runs inside of this little tree, like the sap. Mother's blood runs through.
Trixie Dapper Dinosaur is a linguist, purple. Says, I've earned 1 point on achievement already. Well, thank you very much. I really do appreciate that. It's like when I say, with like the $1 patrons. Yeah, it's not a whole lot, but it adds up, right? If I lost all my $1 patrons, I'd be out, a bit of a chunk of change every month.
The branches of the trees out here, so it's like a little forest of 20 trees. Mother's blood is like the wind blowing through the trees. Baby's blood is like the sap inside the tree.
So basically, this is just look at the trees, except it's look at the placenta.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to take a drink, because look at the trees has never been a good argument for anything. Everyone knows...
Driving me Google debunkers.
Everyone acknowledges that cool things exist in the human body, and that there are fantastically complicated aspects of human reproduction. Like, that's not ever been in dispute. Pointing to it doesn't help, right? Because the thing is, your opponents say that they have an adequate explanation, and you disagree, but you both agree about what's there. So what you should be doing is showing why their explanation doesn't work. And simply pointing to a thing that they think they can explain well doesn't do that. All you could possibly be doing is relying on the ignorance of your audience and their bias in favor of your position. It's not even an actual argument. Carrie Bronson for $5 says, I know it was a rhetorical question, but there's a real answer to it, and it needs to be given. You in all these responsibilities. Yeah, no, I mean, you are not wrong. I am the guy who answers the rhetorical questions. In fact, because a lot of times, the rhetorical questions that creationists ask are actually interesting questions that have actual interesting answers. And instead of giving those answers, they just want to skip by it to go say, like, therefore miracle. It's like, come on, man. Don't do that.
And then they have the audacity to go, that's not God of the Gap.
Yeah, even though it very manifestly is. So let's see. Strawberry, 5th super chat vein, with another 5th super chat. Thank you so much. Says, this talk has turned very metal all of a sudden. Yeah, I can see that. All right, here we go.
So baby's blood is separated from mother's blood by basically what you might call the bark of the tree, the surface. Let's look at that.
I really hate that analogy too. Just stop using it.
It keeps getting worse.
Just use the technical terms, man. Just use the technical terms. Because now all I can think of is like tree bark inside of a uterus, and I don't like it. You don't have to use analogies. You can just describe the things as what they are. Just do that. And I say that as someone who really likes to come up with interesting analogies. And who I think is pretty decent at it.
One of those little tips right there, see? One of the little twigs?
Mm-hmm.
We'll look at that in the microscope. We've cut across it, sliced it, so we're seeing it end on.
Look, I know I'm generally speaking a descriptivist. I try not to be too prescriptivist, except in certain
circumstances. We were just about to say the same thing.
But yep.
I know what you're about to say.
Go ahead, you can say it.
Acrossed.
Yep, I hate it.
That's a regional thing.
I know.
I haven't heard it in years, but
There's technically nothing wrong with it, but it sounds like chalk or fingernails on a chalkboard to me. And I get it. It's not fair of me. It's honestly probably inappropriate for me to think of it that way, but it does something to my brain, and I don't like it. What? We just got 5 gifted memberships from Joshua Geese, which I still hope I'm pronouncing that name right. But here we go. We'll take 5 drinks. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Strawberry, 5th Super Chat vein, says, your analogies are much less gross, Dapper. Well, I would hope so. Because quite honestly, uterine tree bark is one of the grossest things that I've ever heard of.
I guarantee you someone's going to change that to their display name.
Oh my goodness, I'm going to have to read it in...
Uterine tree bark. Yeah, it's going to happen.
I'm going to have to read that in Super Chats, uterine tree bark. Oh. All right.
And when we look at it up there, this would be baby's blood inside the twig, huh?
Okay.
And this red blood cell, wants to jump ahead on me. The red blood cell just outside right here, that would be mother's red blood cell.
Yeah, we know that there's a barrier, but it's a semi-permeable barrier to allow oxygen and nutrients to flow between. Like, we get it. That's the point. Like, everyone understands this.
Over to the right here would be a white blood cell from mother.
I missed a super chat. Oh, I did for 666 from my unfinished journey. I left my journey
Hail
phone.
Nero!
I left my journey phone at home, so I can't do my usual promotion. But what I can do is say, Hail Nero, Hail Dapper, and Hail Science. Thank you very much. And I'm double checking to see if I added your super chat into the running total for the do we get a fancy avatar? And yes, I did. And I have to remember, on Next Kent with Bent, tutu. I'm wearing a tutu. Not Bent.
Hey!
Me. I'm going to shove myself into my hot, sweaty, itchy, stupid human suit for you guys. Because we got to like 311% or something like that on my birthday.
Oh, yeah, that's right, I saw that.
Yeah. Savage Poultice Cuisine Cobra for $2 says, I hereby revoke this man's analogy permit. Yeah, he is coming up with just some of the worst analogies, and I hate it so much.
Inside here is a white blood cell of the baby. Do you see how close the blood is? But it's separated by this pink line that you see right here.
Mm-hmm.
Now that pink line is a cell. Did you hear me right? Singular, a cell.
Okay.
It forms from millions of separate cells that fuse together. They're called cytotrophoblast cells. They fuse, and when they fuse, they form the largest cell in the body. It's believed that the surface of the placenta, the pink line you see going around the twig, cut in cross-section, which is called a syncytial trophoblast, is one cell.
Okay, so Joshua Geese is saying that is the correct German pronunciation, but their family usually goes with it like Geis, and they will accept either. Then I probably will stick with Geese, because that is what my instinct is, and knowing that is the German pronunciation of the German name, I think I'll stick with it. But also, Fear Uterine Barkmonger, of course. For 26, thank you very much. Do appreciate the sex. Says, ask and ye shall receive. I was less asking than dreading, but, it is what it is. Thank you very much for your generous donation of sex.
It's a syncytial cell having been formed from millions of separate cells that fuse. So lots of nuclei, but basically one membrane.
And?
It's cool, but I don't know what the point is, right? Like, there are lots of polynucleated big cells that exist. The fact that one of them happens to be in the placenta, I don't know what to do with that information. Like, what am I supposed to take away from that, David? That could be the new title for this stream, is just, what am I supposed to do with this information?
And your point is?
Yeah, like, it's cool information, right? Like, I appreciate the coolness of, reproductive systems and, the various ways that they do things like prevent allergic reactions from the mother while protecting the growing embryo and, allowing for the transfer of nutrients and oxygen. Like, all that's really cool. I just don't know how it turns into an argument that evolution is false.
Well, as Dr. Josh would say, therefore what?
Right, exactly.
How big would this cell be if you could flatten it out instead of covering all these little trees?
I
Why
don't
does
know,
that
man.
matter?
I don't know.
What does that have to do with anything?
2 acres. Let's just go with 2 acres. I don't know why it would possibly matter.
Estimated to be the size of a living room area rug, 8 by 11 feet.
Way smaller than what I said. Good job, everybody. What? I'm taking a drink. I just don't understand what we're doing here. I mean,
Big cell, therefore God?
I guess. Yeah, big cell, therefore God. To be fair, I did say 2 acres in an attempt to overestimate. Like, that was my goal. Because I knew that whatever he was going to say was, he was like, look how big that is. So I figured I'd just go bigger, but okay.
Mother's blood's on one side, baby's blood's on the other.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that goes from mom out here to baby or baby to mom has to go across that seamless surface.
Yeah.
Water goes.
That's the whole point of the placenta, dude. Of course, what are you... This is getting very, very frustrating. Because the thing is, it's... I'll take a drink, I guess, because technically he's been right about a lot of this stuff. I just don't know why he's saying it. Like, the explanatory filter...
He's just trying to impress the audience with all this technical explanation and see how complicated it is. It must be...
But one of the problems, though, is that evolution predicts complexity. In fact, it predicts that things should become more complex than they often need to be. And that's what we see. And I don't like this. Oh, here's a fun thing about human reproductive systems, though. Did you know that you have pseudogenes for yolk? Yeah. In fact, you have the same pseudogenes that monotremes have, except one of the pseudogenes that you have is, in fact, in them, an actual yolk gene for vitellogenin, which they actually express in the tiny little yolks that they have in their eggs. Why? This is a question for the young Earth creationists out there. Why did placental mammals have the protein, well, the pseudogenes for proteins that go into egg yolk, that in monotremes, one of which is unbroken, and in general, most reptile lineages, are all there? Why is that, guys? Why do you have the genetic material for egg yolk? Did Adam and Eve lay eggs? And then now you just have degenerate egg yolk genes? Is that what happened?
God, that...
Oh, hey, Paul's here.
Oh, hey!
Paul G says, you think this happened by chance, that a non-placental animal gave birth to a placental animal? Checkmate. Interestingly enough, no, that is not what I would say is what happens.
Goes across passively. Unfortunately, alcohol goes across, so if mom consumes a lot of alcohol, the baby could be born with fetal alcohol syndrome.
Hey, you know what? Good message. If you're pregnant, don't drink.
Probably avoid alcohol.
Yeah, don't drink, don't smoke. Take a drink for that. Also, just generally speaking, consult with your doctor before taking any kind of drug, nicotine, alcohol.
Yes.
Even your prescription should be something you have a conversation with your doctor about, right? This is not me giving you medical advice. This is me telling you, go get medical advice from a real doctor. Check on those things. Because, yeah, lots of drugs can pass through the barrier of the placenta. And what might be safe for you might not be safe for the embryo. So, yeah, good on Menton for, keeping up awareness about things like fetal alcohol syndrome. Because it is a real problem, right? So, I do appreciate that. And I do want to give credit where it's due. Especially since AIG has been so big on the medical misinformation front. I want to recognize when they're not.
Here and there you see little clusters of nuclei. That's where the nuclei are kind of pushed out of the way, so there can be lots of things going across the placenta. Why, in addition to this, do I think that the placenta shows evidence of design?
Dude, what do you mean in addition to this? You haven't told us why this is evidence of design. You can't just describe a thing and then say, therefore, design, right? You have to tell us why. Like, I can actually give you positive reasons why I might think that a watch, or give one of his previous examples, the carvings on Mount Rushmore were designed. I can give you reasons that don't just refer to a description of the thing. You didn't give us that. In fact, the thing that really frustrates me is when he was talking about Mount St. Helens in a different episode that we did earlier, he actually gave the reasons why we could detect design, right? One of the things he pointed out was that a lot of the area where the rock was missing did not fall along natural cleavage planes, and he's right about that. That is a reason to say that, hey, this is not the result of natural weathering on the rock. And yeah, that's true. In fact, I brought it up before he did, because I was trying to explain how I would determine that they were designed, pointing out things that don't normally happen when left up to their own devices, right? And explaining why they don't happen, how they happen here, and how therefore we can infer design. You can do the same thing with like stone tools, right? Like arrowheads or hand axes and stuff, right? There are micro fractures that are characteristic of people doing flint knapping that you do not find in natural weathering. When you find these micro fractures, that is positive indication of a stone having been worked by some intelligent agent for a purpose. Even if what you found is the cast-off stone, which means it's not the thing that was actually being used as a tool. Okay, great. What's the analogous idea here with not the uterus, I guess, but with the placenta? What thing about the placenta isn't what could happen naturally? And I don't have an answer to that, because he hasn't even tried to give one. DM Google Debunker Wing for $2 says, but Dapper, have you considered look at the trees? No. As a matter of fact, I have, and I don't understand why people keep using it. Doesn't seem like an argument to me. I guess I'll play.
Because it does everything. I mean, it accomplishes the function of most of the organs in the body. It's a lung, it's a liver, it's a digestive system, an endocrine system, a urinary system. Baby can be born with no lungs. Do okay till you take the placenta away. Then it dies.
It's
okay.
Not any of those
Mutations, therefore God?
Well, yeah, there's that. But also, it's not a respiratory system. It is providing oxygen. But that's not the same thing as being a respiratory system, right? It is just a chemical exchange area. The embryo, as it grows, still needs to make its own like circulatory system, its own all those different systems. For instance, if the embryo never developed a heart, eventually the embryo would outgrow the ability of just diffusion of the oxygen into its tissues from the placenta to accommodate that, and it would in fact die before it came to term. That's a problem. And the reason for that is because without a heart, you couldn't actually pump enough blood through the placenta, even though enough oxygen is present at the barrier between the infant blood supply and the maternal blood supply. You would still need the heart to be there in order to make the blood flow. The embryo still needs all of these things in embryo. Now, some of them maybe not, right? Like, yeah, okay, if you have underdeveloped lungs as an embryo, yeah, you can still be okay. That's why, premature babies are often put into incubators with increased oxygen supply, because their lungs are underdeveloped. Yeah, okay, great. But, like, it's not just a respiratory system. It's a lot of things, but that isn't exactly how this works. So, and then a madman says, "Ha! So Dapper admits that he won't look at the trees." I mean, to be fair, where I live, there aren't that many trees. We have a lot more saguaro, and no one ever says, "Look at the cactus." I don't know why though, because honestly, I think saguaro are more impressive than many trees are. So, I mean, when was the last time you saw like a 20-foot tall cactus there, Vishanti?
Somewhat recently, actually, but yeah.
No,
I have different types of cactus plants in my neighborhood. That one.
Well, that's because saguaro. There's a tiny little patch of wild saguaro in California, but it's really tiny, and it's right on the Arizona border. Yeah, the only two states in the United States that have wild saguaro are Arizona and California. You ever see a western with saguaro and it's not set in Arizona or California? There are saguaro where they shouldn't be. So, there you go.
Those 100,000 proteins I told you about in the body? There's one of them you maybe haven't heard of. It's called transferrin. Without transferrin, none of us would be here. How about that for important, huh?
I would have thought he'd be a bigger fan of cisferrin. This is a bad joke about creationists being transphobes. Which, to be fair, is not true of all of them. Yeah, I guess it was a joke that didn't land. I'll take a drink. Rebecca from Bread of Life, as far as I know, is trans-affirming and a young earth creationist. So, I mean, there are exceptions. And Menton wasn't one of them.
You see, the baby has to make its own blood up here, and the baby's only source of iron is from mother's blood.
Apology here for 5 beaver bucks says, what is your so-called evolutionary advantage of having the placenta be edible/delicious?
Oh my god!
Checkmate. You know, I was hoping to get through all of this without having to talk about people who like to eat placentas. And then we couldn't. Because of Paul.
Damn it, Paul!
You know what? Checkmate. Evolution is a lie.
Oh, no.
God designed the placenta
so cursed.
specifically
This
to be
is so
eaten.
Cursed.
Ugh.
Oh.
Look, I'm not going to tell people not to eat a placenta.
Oh,
But
that.
here's the thing. Check with your doctor, but it's not going to give you some kind of magical vital energy or something. Like, it's...
Yeah, it's not an immortality or a fountain of youth thing.
Yeah, it's a hunk of tissue, mostly
Pain.
blood vessel. It's the same kind of tissue that you would normally throw out when you're butchering an animal. So, like,
Mhm.
I mean, eat it, I guess, if you want, but you're literally eating the least edible part of an animal.
It sounds like placenta and onions. God.
Way to ruin some delicious onions. Man. You know, I've been thinking I kind of want like an onion burger, you know? Where you just lay
Please stop.
so many onions over the ground beef and you press it down, flip that over, let the other side of the beef steam in the onion juice.
I really dislike onions. That's one of the foods that no matter how you cook it or camouflage it, I cannot bite into them without retching. I don't know, it's just a thing. I don't mind the flavor of them when you cook things in them, like fajitas. I just eat around the onions. If I get fajitas, I don't.
You're missing out on one of the best kinds of burger.
I mean, I've had one before. I did not like it. For whatever reason, I prefer just the patty. You can marinate it, but don't put cheese in it. Don't put onions in it. Like, don't mash that in before you cook it. Just let me add toppings on my own accord.
So you're not a big fan of the chopped cheese, then?
Nah.
Okay.
Also, a lot of times people will use American cheese, and that has a really high, like, lactose content amount or whatever in there, and so it upsets me.
Okay.
I hate being lactose intolerant.
A Madman says, "Would you at least, or Dapper Dinosaur, would you at least recommend a sauce?" I mean, use your favorite barbecue sauce is going to be my recommendation, because you're already eating like the worst part that you could possibly be eating. You might as well use a great barbecue sauce on it to disguise that flavor, because let's be honest, if you smother it in enough barbecue sauce, all you're tasting is the barbecue sauce.
Yeah.
They're called Oklahoma burgers. Yeah, you're right, Tiktaalik. I had forgotten the term. Yeah, a good Oklahoma burger. Which was an invention of the Great Depression, because it turns out onions are super cheap, and they're a great way to spread out your beef, which is already super cheap because it's ground beef, which at the time was mostly made out of the parts of the beef that you weren't going to sell otherwise. So, Strawberry 5th Super Chat vein for $2 says, #1 most cursed Dapper stream. Thanks, Menton. Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, this is pretty.
I cannot disagree with you. Yeah, we've gone from uterus bark to eating placentas to...
Why?
Ask Paul. Go complain to
Release
Paul.
me.
Soon.
Comes from mother's blood up here. Only source of iron has to come across to baby's blood. Problem is, the placenta is impermeable to iron. Anyone see a problem here? The baby can't make blood. The blood is the life.
Yeah, the baby's going to have trouble making blood if it can't get iron.
Iron doesn't come across the placental barrier, except for transferrin. Transferrin is one of a couple of hundred transport proteins in the placenta that go across, pick up things from mother's blood, bring it across the barrier, and release it to baby's blood.
Okay.
Man, I like to play a little game with the evolutionists and say, look, I'm going to give you a head start.
Okay.
I'm giving you everything in the entire cosmos as a head start. Man, that's generous, huh?
That seems to already include placentas. Just pointing that out. But okay.
Yep.
I'm just keeping back one thing, transferrin. I'm putting that in my pocket here. I keep this, you get everything else.
All right.
You're done. All placental mammals, you'd be the last generation on Earth.
Yep, but new placentas would evolve with transferrin proteins.
Do non-placental animals exist?
Yes, as a matter of fact, they do.
I rest my case, Your Honor.
Also, Dapper's a professional. All right, for $2, Fate to Gray, no true Dino Man. says, look at the cacti, Dapper. Are you a young Earth creationist now? Hold on. Let me take a look at a cactus. I gotta open up these blinds for a second here. Okay. I looked at cactus. No. I am not, therefore, now a young Earth creationist, despite having looked at the cactus.
This is getting cursed. I hate that.
Savage Poultice Cuisine Cobra for $2 says, I cast placenta. No. The worst D&D spell.
You know what? Just for that Savage Cobra, I cast Conscious Breathing.
Ooh, harsh. And on the whole audience, too.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay, so here's the thing, right? Remember that thing that humans have all those proteins for that are broken now? Egg yolks?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In an organism that is still expressing the egg yolk, all of the iron is going to be pre-packed in the egg. Okay. But remember that the egg yolk is shrinking on our way to viviparity, which means you can have a transitional stage where you have a yolk that is providing iron, and then the rest of the iron is being received from either food that the mother is feeding, or, well, any parent is feeding after birth, or milk in the case of mammals, right? So we have a transitional stage where you can get the initial iron you need to get through to the point where you're born. You don't need additional iron. But as the yolk shrinks, it puts, again, more selection pressure to be able to transfer nutrients, which means there's selection pressure or transfer proteins between the maternal side and the embryo side of whatever placenta is evolving. The problem is that David Menton's conception of evolution is like, boom, you have the anatomical structure placenta in one step, but for some reason it just didn't come with the transfer proteins that it needs. But that's not how this works. All of this evolves together in tandem, right? As you have increasing selection pressure for a placenta in the first place, you have increasing pressure for transfer proteins, and you have decreasing pressure for the yolk. So as the yolk shrinks, you are now under pressure for more transfer proteins. So when those evolve, it allows the yolk to shrink further.
Under pressure.
Exactly. Thank you for not turning it into Ice Ice Baby.
Why would I do that?
Because you hate me?
I don't hate you more than I like Vanilla Ice. That made sense in my brain. Do the math. It's fine.
I'm not even going to try to parse that one. I'm just going to hit play on Menton.
Now you could go to the gods of evolution and say, this rascal Menton, he gave me everything.
Yeah, just take a drink.
The gods of evolution.
Hmm? Like
who
Dawkins,
are they precisely?
Dawkins and Huxley and Darwin.
And aren't they the prophets of evolution?
Look, deification is a complex process. And you know what? Lots of cultures throughout the history have deified various historical figures. There is currently, in Washington state, unless it's gone now, but there was at least at one point, very recently, a Shinto shrine from an official Shinto priest who had his, whatever the Shinto version of ordination is, right down in Japan. And that shrine is dedicated to the kami George Washington.
Oh, well.
So, you know, people get deified. I mean, there's an entire painting in the Capitol building of the United States called the deification.
The apotheosis of
which is just
George
the same word
Washington.
as, and apotheosis is just
yeah.
the Greek form of deification, which is the Latin form.
Yeah.
So, you know?
Yeah.
It's complicated.
That's always made me a little uncomfortable. Like,
that's really weird.
The apotheosis of George Washington, like, it's so weird that, like, fundamentalist Christians don't ever talk about that. Like,
yeah.
Wouldn't that be considered, like, a false idol in their eyes?
Honestly, I think we should probably keep it because of its, you know, historical significance and how old it is, and I like, you know, building preservation and whatnot. But if you asked me whether or not it should be painted in the first place, I would have said no.
I would have said no. Like,
that seems
like,
weird and inappropriate.
Hey, George Washington was very important. We're going to give him his flowers, but I wouldn't go so far as to deify. Right. Like, I feel like that's a little much.
Yeah, don't paint him like he's a Roman emperor becoming a god. Maybe. I don't know. Todd Ferguson,
Is he the god of America?
Yes. Obviously.
Okay.
Todd Ferguson, Flurfovent supervisor, who's been a member for 4 months and is at the annual level, says, I've had a Cthulhu Tentacles mask. That's cool. Also, kimonos are for men too. That's true. Although they are a different cut for men. So here's the Godzilla. For that. And then Strawberry, 5th Super Chat Vane, for $5, with another one of their 5th Super Chats. Says, of all the things I did not want today, David Menton saying placenta and baby's blood 5,000 times was at the top of the list. I'm sorry. I didn't know that was what was going to happen. I do think I skimmed this talk at one point, but I've forgotten all of it. So, yeah.
So, Sable Eagle says, I thought there was an accent issue there, and you'd said the commie, George Washington.
Oh, K-A-M-I, not C-O-M-M-I-E.
My brain heard it as commie, like communist as well, so you're not alone, Sable Eagle.
They're very similar sounding words.
Homophones will kick your ass. Naimaz in the chat says, just showed up to the stream and I'm getting cannibalism and Ice Ice Baby. I don't know what's more frightening.
Both. The answer is both.
The answer is yes.
Also, I gotta say, in my idiolect, they're not quite homophones. I do pronounce them distinctly. I have kami and kami. And I do
Listen,
use a different vowel.
where I come from, homophones are just like the law of the land.
Yeah,
so
y'all got way too many verb mergers. Or not verb,
I'm
sorry,
just
vowel
saying,
mergers.
like, pen as in the thing you write with, and pin as in the thing that you would do to, like, attach an item to another, per se.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the same in the Deep South.
Yep.
So,
yep, the pin-pen merger is pretty well known.
Yep.
Transferrin.
Oh, yeah.
Could you give me a few million years to dumb luck my way into transferrin?
Yeah, I absolutely would, because it's currently happening.
Yeah.
We're literally watching that exact thing happen, David Menton. Now, sure, if you deleted transferrin right now, sure, all placental mammals would go extinct, but placentas would not. There are currently placentas evolving right now. They would re-evolve. Now, they would be made out of different kinds of cells that came from different parts of the female reproductive tract, because they're already doing that. But that's the thing. That's part of the contingency of evolution. But yes, transfer proteins for vital nutrients would in fact re-evolve. We're watching that thing, that very thing that you're telling us can't happen. We're currently seeing it happen. And that's the thing that really frustrates me, right? There's a reason that in The Rocks Were There Volume 1 by R.J. Jenner and Jackson Wheat, go get it on Amazon, they point out that creationists routinely ignore about 90% of the relevant data in any field they bother to talk about. And they don't talk about many of the fields that pose problems for their ideas in the first place. There's a reason why we basically get nothing about biogeography from creationists. They just can't deal with it, so they just don't. Centered for $5 says, Sundies don't know what apotheosis means, so they won't object in their ignorance, which is apparently bliss. I mean, my guess is that, yeah, a lot of them don't know what apotheosis is. But
I like what, I think it's Keisha that says all vowels are schwas eventually. I love that. And then Fearmonger plays off that and says schwas are the vowels, what crabs are to evolution. That is so real.
And then DM Google Debunker Wing says, wait, RJ wrote a book? Yeah, he's written like 4 or 5 books.
Yeah.
2 of them are specifically about like evolution and creationism and whatnot. The first one is Evolution Slam
Rocks
Dunk.
Were There.
Well, no, that came after Evolution Slam Dunk. But that one's about the reptile-mammal transition. And then, yeah, The Rocks Were There, which he co-wrote with Jackson Wheat. Yep. I own both of them. And my copy of The Rocks Were There is signed by RJ.
Neat.
It's not signed by Jackson because Jackson didn't want to go to the Grand Canyon with us.
Aw.
What a loser.
Nope, one generation, you're done.
Yeah, but placentas aren't. Placental mammals are. I'm not even sure marsupials would be done, even though they have placentas.
And it isn't so much irreducible complexity as is insurpassable complexity. You do not get to go to step C without D.
That doesn't mean anything.
Sort of like Monopoly. Do not go to jail, go directly to jail. Do not pass goal. Well, back to our explanatory filter. Does the law explain it? Now this...
No, not really.
No.
I mean, there are quote-unquote laws in evolution, but they're not the mathematical expressions like you get in physics. Like there's the law of monophyly, or there's von Bayer's laws of embryology, but like there's no equation that goes with them. And they are themselves products of the theory of evolution, which is itself not just chance, but it's also not design. It is chance along with natural laws. Like, in fact, some cases just straight up math. Here's a fun thing. If it is true that genotypes result in phenotypes, which it seems obviously true, and it's true that differences in genotype cause differences in phenotype, which also seems obviously true, and if it's true that differences in phenotype can result in differential reproductive success, then evolution is a mathematical certainty. It's literally mathematically impossible for evolution not to happen if those things are true. And everyone agrees that those things are true. Now, you can disagree, like young Earth creationists do, with how much evolution has actually taken place. But one thing that is fundamentally impossible is for it to not be a thing. Evolution must actually work at a fundamental level if those things are true. Now, there might be some things evolution can't do. There might be limits to common ancestry. Those we can't prove mathematically in quite that same way. But fundamentally, if those things are true, then mutations plus differential reproductive success means evolution is a fact. Strawberry, 5th Super Chat vein for $5 with, again, of course, their 5th Super Chat. Definitely really the 5th Super Chat. Totally not anything else that isn't a 5th Super Chat. Says, hey, did you know that if you delete this thing that keeps you alive, you die? Checkmate, evolutionists. Yeah, I mean, the same thing happened with Bill Morgan, right? He likes to ask this question, like, which evolved first? The heart or the lungs or the blood? Or the... and it's like, dude... Because his idea of evolution is that, like, evolution produced, like, an entire dog, but it just didn't have a heart, and it had to wait for the heart to evolve. It's like, no!
No.
But that's how both he and Menton are conceptualizing this, right? Like, the way that evolution works is...
there was a creature without an eyeball, and then suddenly a creature gives birth to something with an eyeball. And it's like, no, that's literally not
but that eyeball is missing one key component. Because that's another thing he'll ask, is like, which came first? The retina or the optic nerve? It's like, you don't know what you're talking about, man. Not one of those came first. They evolved together. But okay.
This is interesting. This is a place evolutionists are looking where there could be laws that would give the appearance of design. Several years ago, old Charlie Darwin.
Okay, so like 150 years ago?
My cousin like that?
Yeah.
I had a friend called Asa Gray. Asa Gray was a scientist. He was not a Christian, and he wasn't...
Actually, I don't know that Asa Gray wasn't a Christian. A lot of Darwin's friends who were also scientists were also Christians. Charles Lyell comes up as a prominent example. It wouldn't surprise me if Asa Gray weren't a Christian. I just don't actually know. If anyone wants to look it up...
Also, how's that relevant?
I mean, it's not, but to him, you gotta remember, he is putting everything in terms of an us versus them dichotomy.
Oh, right, of course.
Right. Because for you and I, who don't group the world into us, the Christians, and everyone else, the horrible, godless, atheist heathens, it seems weird to constantly bring up the religious affiliation of random people from history, but for him, that's a key point of information. Right? It's just like when Kent Hovind points out that Stephen Jay Gould, he calls him a communist. I don't know the exact degree that Stephen Jay Gould was like a communist or a Marxist or anything. I know that he was sympathetic to left-wing political movements, but like, it's the same reason for that, right? It's just to point out, like, either, hey, this is the other side. So I'm either giving you, like, unfriendly statements that agree with us, or I'm poisoning the well and saying you shouldn't trust this guy because he's a communist. Both of which are just fallacious ad hominem attacks. Or not necessarily attacks, but they're arguments, right? We should either believe or not believe this argument because of who the person is. Because remember, if you say, we should trust this person because of irrelevant personal detail, that's still an ad hominem argument, right? You're still invalidly basing the truth or falsity of a claim on an irrelevant detail about a person. And also, ad hominem arguments don't have to be attacks, right? If I say, well, okay, look, maybe we should listen to Vishanti, but she's just such a nice person that she can't deal with the hard truths, so we shouldn't listen to her. That's not an insult. Saying something nice about her, but still the conclusion is, therefore, don't listen to her. And also, an insult is an ad hominem. If I say, here are 8 different reasons that you're wrong, which are all logically valid, and also you're a jerk, not an ad hominem, just an insult.
Mm-hmm.
And that's I know it's not technically relevant to this, but it's one of my pet peeves that people have just conflated insult with ad hominem when they are very different things. Sometimes there is overlap, but sometimes there isn't.
Yeah, it's just like, you disagreed with me, therefore that's an ad hom. It's like, no.
Yeah.
Not.
Or you said something
It would be like saying, well,
therefore...
you're wrong. That's not an ad hominem. You're wrong because you're ugly. That's an ad hominem.
Mm-hmm. You're wrong and you're ugly, not an ad hom.
Mm-hmm.
DM Google Debunker Wing for $2 says, communism isn't a red herring. I think he meant is a red herring. And then the N got in the way. But yes, of course it is. Thank you very much. And we'll get a little bit more in bed. Oh, you know what? No, we're done. It's the top of the hour.
Done.
Here's the deal, guys.
That's a lot.
This really has been a lot. There's been placentas. There's been uterus bark. There's been
we stop
plugging things in.
No. Just please stop.
So yeah, we're done for today. Vishanti, do you have anything you want to tell people about?
I have a Patreon and a wish list.
Mm-hmm.
If you feel so inclined to support me via either of those. And I've got an upcoming collaboration with Michael Beverly in I think it's next week. So I'll remind everybody when we get closer to that.
Okay. Well, let's see what's coming up on this channel. So on Tuesday, it looks like what we're going to be doing is a Dapper React. I've invited Vishanti. I believe you think you're going to be able to make it?
There's like a 99% chance that I'll be there.
Okay. It'll probably just be continuing on with this. So you get like a 3-day reprieve or something, or 2.5-day reprieve.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that we moved my bi-weekly leadership call for the organization that I do work with. I'm pretty sure we moved that not to this next Tuesday. So if that is the case, then I'll drop in or drop out. But other than that, it'd be okay.
Strawberry 5th Super Chat Vane for $5 with, again, another 5th Super Chat says, before this ends, I have to mention that my summer nail polish collection is finally out, and I did, in fact, name a color pelagic tunicate, which...
I want to see it!
It's pretty funny, but I also hate it. Okay. Let's see. What is coming up? So, on Tuesday, we've got another Dapper Reacts. On Wednesday, we should be having a Jackson with Jackson. Then on Thursday, there is the premiere of the 3rd Pam Acker video. It is Steamboat Pammy, in which I unveil publicly my Steamboat Willie avatar. Because Steamboat Willie is, in fact, public domain. And so I made an avatar specifically for that. So if you've been getting early access, I believe you've seen more than one Steamboat Willie avatar video from me. I think 2, maybe. But if you don't have early access, this will be your first time seeing it. Then on Saturday, we should be doing another Dapper Reacts. I don't know if we're going to be able to finish this up on Tuesday. If we don't, it'll probably be finished up on Saturday. I'm hoping we can finish it up. We've only got like 15 minutes of it. We might be able to just push it for like a 3rd hour and finish. I don't know. Well, Vishanti and I will talk, right? We'll talk.
Yeah.
And then that brings us a full week ahead. And so
Sir Derpy Mister says, bye everybody, I'm officially going to have nightmares about the body horror we've discussed today.
Yeah. This is about as Cronenbergian as any of my streams have ever been.
Yeah, it is very Cronenberg.
Yeah. I'm going to go watch Existence, however you're supposed to pronounce that word. Yeah, however you're supposed to pronounce that. I'm going to go watch that now.
God, I want to rewatch Videodrome.
Actually, what's going to happen is I'm going to go over to my Discord server for patrons and members, and we're going to watch some Power Rangers SPD. So
I'm going to take a nap.
All right. Well, I'll see anyone who wants to watch SPD over on my Discord server. I'll see everyone else, hopefully, on Tuesday. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Hey, before you leave, I just want to take a second to thank my patrons and channel members, especially those pledging $20 or above. Benthoven, Thoravara, Tapioca Weasel, Whispers, Elleron Teller, Horseflesh, Ian Chen, Kelvin Brostick Van Manen, Landon Knoll, Mabdy Babdy, Sphincter of Doom, Wallace, John Ackerman, and Strawberry Vein. It's because of my channel members and patrons whom you're seeing on screen that this channel can stay afloat. Without you, it would all shut down. If you want to join the team, there's a link to join the channel below this video, and there's a link to join the Patreon in the description. On the Patreon, you can get a 10% discount for pledging annually, and either way, you get early access to virtually all of my scripted videos, often 3 to 5 months before they come out for the general public. Thanks for watching.